Welcome to the Z Suite. If you have zigged and zagged your way to the top, you're in the right place. And we are, as we've talked about, we are here in London. We've got a studio, and I'm excited to be able to do one of these in person. So we've got two guests today. First, let me introduce my colleague Allison, excuse me, on my right. She'll be helping us out, and a hard job of trying to keep us all on time, as we often get carried
Never
away
fails.
with these good conversations. Um, and then I want to introduce to my left Gavin Pearson, who is editor of New Civil Engineer, and Rob Meyer, who is managing director of Motherboard.com. Um, so let's dive in and get you guys introduced. So Rob, maybe we'll start with you. Motherboard chose to be a niche consulting firm, and from day one, right? So how's that worked to your advantage?
I don't know if it's from day one. When we started, it was pretty much take what we can get in terms of business. And I think all consultancies and all businesses tend to be that way. But we did quickly carve out a niche for ourselves. And yeah, it's we've seen the results busier than ever. And yeah, great problem to have.
Excellent. And Gavin, thank you for joining as well. It's a kind of a wild time to be a UK engineering firm in a consultancy. Um, so what's going on in the market? How are the specialists
Yeah.
doing and what's going on?
I mean, the fact that the market is, depending on the part of the market, some parts of the market are incredibly busy. So water industry, the energy sector, there's an awful lot happening. Some of the other sectors have got an awful lot in the pipeline that's coming down the line, but not quite there yet. But I think the fact that there is potentially a huge amount of work right across the board is a great opportunity for specialists, and especially because there's so much more focus now on getting every individual part of a project as exactly right as possible.
Hmm,
Means that for some of the smaller firms and some of the specialist firms out there, there's a real opportunity to have a big impact.
excellent.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, it's great to have you both here. And yeah, thanks, Mark, for making the trip over. I'm going to be hosting the kind of Q&A part of this, so I'm looking forward to deep diving into some questions that I have here. And audience listening, please do write your questions in as well. We're going to come back to them at the end and take a lucky few people off mute to hopefully ask some great questions to the panel as well. So get them coming in. Yeah, looking forward now to this. It's a super interesting topic today, like weird wins and niche specialisms. So yeah, looking forward to diving deeper. I'll start my first question for Mark and Rob. Hopefully it's a nice one to start off, but you've both have or in the past or are leading consulting firms. So can you sum up your firm's niche in 5 words and give us an idea of how you got there as well? So Mark, let's go to you.
Yeah, so before I came to ProjectWorks, I ran a consulting firm called Nexient, and we summed up our niche as life's too short for crappy software. I think that's 6 words, but the idea was that there was a lot of devices in the world. You think like your stove, your microwave, your thermostat that have a lot of software in them, but the companies that make them are not very good at making software, and so they're usually pretty infuriating to try to use. And so our service that we offered was product teams that included a product manager, a designer, and developers. And our specialization was we're going to give you a really great user experience. And so that's where we landed. We spent a lot of years kind of wandering and doing whatever came our way, and we can get into that in more detail, but that was how we specialized.
Great.
Excellent. 5 words, that's tough. Our niche is helping SMBs and charities be more productive. That's where we aim. And we got there because we are in a marketplace with a bunch of competitors who offer the same and similar services to us. And what we noticed is that they were all going after the big enterprise plays. And we noticed that it was almost an untapped portion of the market. And we threw our towel in and said, put our towel down and said, this is what we're going to we'll take a hand at it and see what we can do. And like I say, it's worked out well for us.
Yeah. And Rob, you have your platinum partner with Monday.com, and that's a large part of your like focus or your niche as well. So how was it building a bit of a niche around a platform or another business, I guess? Did it have challenges or?
Yeah, I mean, Monday.com are great in terms of partnering with. They're very helpful, offer a lot of resources. So in a lot of ways, it was not that challenging. But carving a name for yourself in the market is what the challenge was. So I think it's delivering what you promise you're going to do and building that reputation on this is what we offer and we do it. What we do well, and we basically do what we say on the tin.
Mm-hmm. Great. Gavin, coming to you now. As you said previously, it is an interesting time in the UK engineering space. So let's talk a bit about like how those small SMB UK consulting, UK engineering consultancies and firms could leverage niche to win bigger work in the wave of work coming.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple of different kinds of niches out there which are probably really valuable right now. With so much big project work, there's a renewed focus on kind of public support for those projects, and helping communities be involved in them, which means that if your niche is perhaps geographical, if you're a relatively smaller firm, you've got a strong geographical niche, you know your area, and that there are increasing opportunities to get involved in some of even the very biggest projects, like kind of Lower Thames Crossing, which is upcoming. And so there's a lot of opportunities there for some of the smaller firms to be the local point of contact and to do that work. When it comes to the very specific engineering niches, and especially in civil engineering, there are now hundreds of engineering niches, and spreading from, there are consultancies out there who specialize in kind of biodiversity net gain. There are companies out there, specialist MEP firms, and everything in between. So for those guys, because every company now can access the kind of the 3D modeling platforms and so on that every big project has to kind of put in place, you're not held back from them if you're one of those specialists. You can bring your specialism to bear. You can actually win that work on the basis of being the best in a way that perhaps in the past you might have been the best, but you may not have been able to kind of provide the technological capacity and that side of things, in order to engage with the potentially hundreds of other stakeholders involved. And that has changed dramatically in recent years.
Yeah. And the local businesses, what's kind of driving that forward? Obviously, they know the area, and I feel like at a certain point that their small local businesses might have been seen as a negative. So what's kind of caused a bit of a shift to more positive lately?
So I think a couple of things. I mean, fundamentally, in some sectors, there's just the extent of work means that, if you need people who know how to work in the water industry, you cannot afford to disregard anyone ultimately at the moment, because AMP8, which is the huge amount of capital work that's going on at the moment, is just gigantic compared to what's gone before. So there's partly about that, but it's also because increasingly every big project has sort of woken up to the issue of kind of the NIMBY effect, the concerns, the disruption that they can have on local communities. And actually, by engaging local companies, it is easy to then engage other local talent. It is easier to build up a sense of support for that project and make you feel like the project itself is not something being done to an area, but perhaps something that is being done with the area and the community that's there. And so for local firms, whether they're local specialists, local generalists, but not necessarily the biggest firms, but they've got that local understanding, that local knowledge, it becomes an asset in and of itself.
Yeah, I love that, bringing like the community together around it as well, and showing that the bigger firms are not there to like railroad anything. Like it must help bring people along on the journey. And I like that as a weird win for those local consultancies. So Mark and Rob, a question here. You've already kind of said it, but let's go a bit deeper about the temptation to be everything to everyone at the start of when starting a consultancy or early days. So did you ever make that mistake, and what did it teach you?
Yeah, I wouldn't categorize it as a mistake to start with. I mean, cash flow is king, especially for a startup business, and getting that business through the door is key. I think as we've grown, we've definitely learned from that, and finding our niche has definitely paid off. I don't think it's. I mean, the niche thing is definitely a good way to distinguish ourselves in the marketplace. But yeah, I wouldn't categorize start of it. I mean, at the moment, we are saying no to business, and it is case by case though. So we can be a bit more picky and choosy with who we want to do business with, and the profile or the types of companies that we want to work with, and that's a great place to be. But it's definitely been an evolution. It's definitely been a journey, and a long road that we've walked to get to this point.
Yeah, I would agree with the cash is king. In the early days, you have to do whatever you can to keep the staff busy, to get the company some oxygen to keep going. But for us, what it looked like, and when it became clear it wasn't like the right way to work, we would get technology changes all the time. So we would get a request to implement X new technology, whatever it was that week, and we wouldn't have the people on staff that were expert in it. So we'd then go out and, in a panic, we'd try to recruit one or two experts in that technology, and then we'd try to surround them with our own smart developers who don't know that technology. And if you happen to get two good experts quickly, you could do the work pretty well. But when you keep repeating this and what they need to be an expert on changes, you just realize that you're never going to get out of this kind of like this, spin cycle of just doing that over and over. You're never going to get better. You're never going to build a whole skill set. So you really need to get the discipline to say we're going to do one thing, and we're going to have people on staff that are really good at that. And we're going to say no if it's not that. It's really terrifying, to be honest, in the beginning, because you're trying to keep the firm growing and keep all the revenue coming in. And yeah, it's very hard to say no.
Yeah, I'm
Revenue.
sure it must be. And we've got a few questions on that topic as well, because I feel like that is everybody must feel that at the start of when they're starting consultancy, when they're leading a consultancy. And Gavin, just to come over to you, and from your perspective, how do you think, like, people, leaders, specialists, how can a whole team start to get comfortable zeroing in on a niche when it feels risky to say no to stuff?
So I think, especially in the engineering sector, often the people who have started these firms already kind of have in mind what their niche is. They'll typically be an engineer of a particular sector, particular specialism, and they will have set up their business with a view that that's the thing that they're going to do. I think these guys have said it often, relatively quickly, they will find themselves adapting and slightly taking other areas of work and fundamentally bringing in that cash and oxygen to their business, because that's important. But they'll have that sense of where their specialism is, because it will be fundamentally who they are as a person. So if you are a civil engineer who has worked in traffic management planning, and that is the business you've decided to start up because you think that that's what you want to be doing, and you want to specialize in that, and you want to have a small but very capable team doing that, it's probably less scary to feel and think that from that position, because it is where you've started as an individual. You're almost the setting up the business is almost the incidental bit. The nature of the kind of work you want to be doing is the thing that's sort of driven your career up to that point and becomes it. The question then for those guys is, how do they adapt to running a business, which is very different to doing the engineering?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's very interesting insight. With engineers are obviously people who love solving problems, and they'll see problems like that they're going to specialize on. But the challenge of making that a marketable offering, or just doing the marketing or the business management in general to make that niche a success is definitely probably challenging in the early days, I'm going to say.
I think one of the challenges, and I think we're still working on it. I don't think we've got it right yet. Is, to Gavin's point, is working in the business versus working on the business, and you hear that a lot. And it's very difficult as a small niche consultancy or any business to take that step back and say, I can't be in the weeds anymore, because there's other things that, from a strategic perspective, from a marketing perspective, like all what you mentioned, Ellison, all these things need to happen. And if I'm doing what I'm good at and what I know what to do, that's not going to get done. And it's very difficult to take that step back. And I think it comes with growth. I mean, we're very lucky. We've got enough people who can do the day-to-day, where we can now start taking that breath and taking the step back and more strategically looking at the business and how we want to grow and where we want to go, and sort of plan for the future in terms of what we're capable of and what we want to achieve.
Yeah. Oh, and I'm going to add to that as well, especially for some people when they're starting out. I would imagine that, as with all human beings, we like doing the thing we like doing.
Mhm.
So if the thing you're excited about is the thing you've set your business up to do, that doesn't mean your excitement is the taking the step back, looking at and working out how to improve your business as a business.
Mhm.
And especially when you're starting out relatively early on, it's a very time consuming process anyway. You're going to be dedicating a huge amount of your energy to this. And there is a challenge there, because at the same time, you may have your family at home, you do have other commitments in your life. And actually, it's probably very easy for people to focus on the thing that they are inherently the specialist at.
Yeah.
And a little bit sort of put off the
Mm.
working on the business bit.
Yeah, yeah. Mark, you have said that to me a lot over
Yeah,
time,
it's very natural. The other thing I'd say is that there's some training that happens if you've ever been in a large firm. So I started out at what became Accenture, and they pound it into your head that you should be doing billable work. Like anything else is a waste of time. And so you just sort of, you prioritize clients, which is great. It's great for your business. But the week ends and nobody's even thought about, like, how do we run the shop? What process do we have? What tech do we have? And it's just, yeah, it becomes your weekends and evenings, unfortunately, and it becomes sort of the lowest possible amount of time you spend, so you don't really make it any better. You just kind of get done the tactical and get to the next week or the next month or the next quarter.
Yeah.
When coming back to the how niche kind of fits into all this, I think, and saying no to things. And I mean, Mark and Rob, I wonder if you have a story or anything about this, of when did you know your firm had to start saying no to certain projects? And was there a point, were there telltale signs or a moment that was the straw that broke the camel's back, that you said, enough's enough, we're going to change to this kind of strategy and focus on something niche?
I can't call out this is the actual moment when it happened. And I don't know if that moment has happened yet even. Like it's not a defining moment that I can say this on this date, this is when it happened.
There wasn't like a big explosion of like, we're changing everything.
Well, we do that a lot as well, much to the
Yeah.
chagrin of our employees. But we, yeah, like there's no. I think it's case by case. It's when we get to that stage, like we now inherently know, because we've been through the process and we've been doing this for long enough to say this is not something that we should be doing or want to be doing. It's not our strength. So we're going to politely decline. So it's come with experience and doing what we've done for as long as we have. And yeah, I wish I could say there was this magic point in time where we found this all out and this big revelation, but it is a skill that I think we still learning.
Ongoing process.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not something that I ever think. I don't think
It's
you should
finished.
ever
Yeah.
stop learning and doing that. So yeah.
Amazing. Yeah.
And I think for us that it was not one moment. I think it was a moment that lasted almost 3 years that took us to figure this out. So with a few points along the way, one was I remember looking up, we were a outsource software development consultancy. I remember looking up, Gartner said there were 10,000 firms globally that did what we did. And I thought to myself, how on earth do you stand out amongst 10,000 firms? Like, so that was one. And our revenue went down for the first 2.5 years I was there. So it was a real struggle. It was clearly not working. And I felt like one, I want to differentiate the company. And two, we need to find an engine that drives growth, not this sort of like bumping down a little bit each quarter. And then we ultimately landed on that life's too short for crappy software as a way to frame what we wanted to do. But it was like a 3-year journey.
Mm-hmm. Good
Yeah.
to keep in mind, I think, for people
Yeah,
who are
it's not easy.
starting something
Yeah,
like
and
this,
y-
or
yeah.
starting that journey. Great. Okay, to finish the deep dive, then I just want to pivot for a few minutes about culture and attracting talent, and how this kind of all weaves into being specialist, being niche. And I have a question for each of you, so we're quick fire these. Rob, over to you. As you're growing, how are you attracting brilliant specialists to Motherbird?
We have our employees as part of the recruitment process in a number of different ways, like first round interviews, obviously the hiring manager, but we get other people involved. And we also do what we call the Christmas party. So we get our entire company, once the candidate's been through all the interview process, they will meet with our entire company and they just ask them ridiculous questions like, why is a tennis ball fuzzy? And it's just the idea of it is, would you want to sit next to this person at the Christmas party? So I think that goes a long way with the candidate to see they get to see firsthand sort of the culture, the people that they're going to be working with. And I do believe we have some amazingly talented and amazingly passionate people working for us, which we're very fortunate for and appreciate greatly. And that sort of passion comes through when they're speaking to candidates. And I think that is a big attractor for getting the right people through the door. I mean, there's a number of things. I mean, we tried offer great benefits, like all of the things that I'm sure most companies are doing, but I think that does go a long way with people who come through the door and go through the interview process with us.
That sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, I typically don't get involved in the Christmas parties because I've been involved in the interview process. So if you've been interviewed by the person, you're not going to be in the Christmas party. So, but yeah, I've been in a few, and it's very entertaining.
Great. Gavin, question for you. So what's the biggest mistake engineering firms typically make when trying to attract specialist talent? Tough subject, I guess, as well for engineering firms in the UK at the minute.
Yeah, I think probably the biggest mistake that we hear about, and it's something that a number of firms report that they've learned from usually and have kind of adapted, is a sense of valuing yourself as an organization and your company. So if you're a specialist, you may feel like there's a real almost desperation to get enough people who are good enough and to find people who maybe can adapt to being good enough. But actually, if you find yourself slightly going beyond what it is you're really looking for and hiring people who maybe don't quite fit your culture and don't quite fit your vision, you find that sort of 6 months down the line, you've still got the same problem because some people will not have stayed, the culture won't quite be right. And so you get a kind of a repeating cycle, whereas actually a lot of the kind of the really good stuff we hear, and we hear this when we do our early careers edition a lot, which is our January edition of the magazine, is that the best approach is, and this actually applies to big companies as well as smaller companies, but is to be honest with yourself about who it is you really are. And once you've kind of understood who you are as an organization and what your culture is, you sell that and have a bit of faith in the fact that the right people are there. You will find them still worth it, rather than perhaps trying to maybe stretch who you are in order to get enough people in, just because you've kind of got that sense of numbers needed.
Yeah. I always find that an interesting topic at companies, is figuring out who you are and also who you're not. Like having that clear list of each is very powerful. So yeah, that's a good point. Mark, my question for you then to finish us out of this section is that once you had attracted 1,200 specialists to Nexient, what did you do to retain them?
Yeah, we came up with this hypothesis that the people that would be best for us would be people who love to learn and want to keep working on new problems all the time. That's part of why I think they're in consulting. So we did a lot to proactively move them to new projects, to new challenges. And that doesn't always match up with what our clients wanted. Like when clients got a really good person, they would be pretty unhappy when we would pull them out and say we're going to send them off to another client.
Mm.
But for that person, it was what was really good for them to learn, to move up, to, do new things in their career. So it was a tough balance between the two, but keeping everyone challenged, I think, was the key.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. So you want to do right by the employee as well as the client.
Yeah,
Good.
there is always a lot of skirmishes though, because
Yeah.
whoever owns that client is going to come in and say, no, no, we're going to lose the account if you do this.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of drama.
All that fun. Great. That's all of my deep dive questions. Thanks very much. And I think this is the part of the episode where we do our live problem solving. I forget the name of it now, Mark. Can you
Yeah, we're going to workshop
shop that
something,
work?
yeah. And we got a question ahead of time from Richard. He is managing director of a management consultancy in Brisbane, Australia. So one of the joys of working across 14 hours of time zones is I believe it's 1:30 in the morning for him, and he is not on live. So he sent this ahead,
Oh,
knowing
yeah.
that that would be the case. So let me read out the question that he gave us, and then we can work on it, the three of us together. We've made our name by being the specialists, the people clients call when they want real depth, not generalists. But as we grow, I keep asking myself, how do you scale special? I love that question, without watering it down. And honestly, are we clinging too tightly to our niche and holding ourselves back? Um,
A really
so
good
how do you,
question.
yeah, how do you scale special? I thought that was an interesting way to frame that. Um, yeah, I don't know. Do you want to dive in first, Rob, and just think about
Yeah,
even the shape of this challenge and where we want to go?
yeah. I mean, it's with the limited information. It's 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 an interesting one. It's a very good question. How do you scale special? I'd like to say I like the way that he's framed it. Um, we have a mantra in our company: fail forward, fail, or fail fast, fail forward. And don't be afraid to try new things. Within our culture, we want people to make mistakes. We want to try new things. And if you're starting to feel like your niche has handcuffed you in some sort of way, where this is maybe limiting my growth, you don't have to deviate from it. You don't have to say this is no longer my niche, but maybe there's an adjacent thing within you. It could be something to look into and grow that way. If scaling from a just what you're doing is not possible, because maybe you've hit your market size, like there's no more business out there. Hopefully that's not the case, but then that might be something to look into. That's my
Mm.
Yeah, we used to
Yeah.
think about it from more scaling the talent side. So we had a real challenge, we got to 1,200 people. We had a real challenge finding people that were really great at either design, product management, or software engineering. And so we got more and more creative as to how we would find them. So in the beginning, everybody was a university graduate with a computer science degree. Then it was everybody's a university graduate with a technical degree and some experience in computer science. Then we started to go to, at the time, there were a lot of what we called in the States boot camps. So people that did not go to university specifically for computer science or even at all. And they would go to these 3 to 6 month boot camps to learn how to code.
Mm.
Many of those people were self-taught and they learned how to develop software, or they'd learned design or product management. And it was interesting. They turned out to be some of the best people because by learning on their own and like teaching themselves, they got to where they would keep learning on their own. So
Yeah.
when they joined us, they were always working at night to learn more. And they would always be a step ahead of everybody else because they just had this kind of habit of teaching themselves something new all the time. Yeah.
To that point, I find people who do that exact thing, who want to learn and take their own initiative to learn, retain that knowledge more than if you spoon feed someone.
Mm.
If you give them the answers all the time, they'll typically come and ask that same question because there's been no efforts to go and find out for themselves. So 100% agree. And just another point to that in terms of scaling scaling special is part of our recruitment process and bringing people on board is we do a strengths finder test with everybody. And it's not the be all end all, but our industry, like the niche that we're in terms of Monday.com, is not a widely known skill. So we're doing a lot of training from the ground up. So it's more the profile of the person that we're looking for, that we know we can train, who wants to learn, and bring them in like that. One of my past lives as a sales manager, one of my best salespeople that we hired, his previous job was as a barman. So you just never know where your next big talent is going to come from. And I think shutting the door to people who don't fit your mold exactly is potentially cutting off your nose to spite your face.
Yeah, I really agree with that. We had somebody who managed a restaurant. We had somebody who played the cello in a professional orchestra.
Yeah.
We had like a really wide range of backgrounds, and they were some just fantastic employees in our space. So I have a question for you though, as you're doing this. So what I hear from you is the market does not provide you with the skills you need. You find smart people, they have some experience, but they are not really ready to be mid or senior level people in your practice yet. So you're going to develop them into that.
Correct. Yeah.
How do you fit that into your business model, right? So you get somebody, they're new, they don't have all the skills they need, but ideally for you as a small consultancy, they're billable pretty early, pretty fast. It's almost a must-have in a small consultancy. So how does that work in your business model? You've got it isn't up to the skill set yet, but you want them billing a client.
Yeah. And again, I think it comes down to our culture. Like we have a very collaborative culture and people are there to help. So when someone comes in through the door, they're taken under the wing of the team and shown the ropes. So in terms of progression, we estimate 3 to 6 months sort of ramping up. But in that time, they're still being productive. They just might not be client facing. So we have someone who is mentoring them and will be the face of the project, but they essentially get given, it's horrible to say, but the grunt work. You're going to be doing the grunt work and it's part of the process. You need to become au fait with the platform. You have to become more confident with it. And this is how you do it until you're at the level where you start leading calls with clients, and learning that process. But they basically in the background, like shadowing one of the more senior consultants. And then if they ever have any questions, they just need to put their hand up. And we have a virtual office, so we can see where people are and what they're doing. And I'll sometimes see the team like in a common area, and they're all doing it. And afterwards, I'll go to the manager and say, "What was that about?" And it's like, "No, someone had a problem that they couldn't solve. So they like shot up a flare and the entire team got together and they just brainstorm and say, how do we solve this?" And that's all. And like no one told them to do that. And just seeing that in action it's heartwarming, if I'm honest, to see them collaborating like that.
Yeah. We used to, it's interesting you brought up grunt work and something that we used to have a challenge where clients would come to us and say, I don't want to pay for the junior person because they don't have the skills. And our chief delivery officer had this speech he would give them where he would say, look, there's on any project, I don't care what it is, there is grunt work to be done. And if you have one of my senior people doing it, you're paying way too much for that to happen. You're overpaying. So
Yeah.
you want me to have at least 1 or 2 junior people on this project because there's work they can get done productively. It was an interesting speech, and he would bring people around to like, oh, yeah, that's a good point. I don't want to pay too much for this kind of work.
As soon as it hits the pockets, it's a different story.
Yeah.
It sounds like we've cracked the scaling side of it, and I think correct me if I've got this wrong, but hiring early career people, molding them to the be a consultant in your kind of specialism allows you to expand and continue working with your niche. But coming back to his question about scaling like the business, I guess, is he clinging too tightly and holding himself back to growth perhaps at a certain point? And I'm looking at you, Rob, because what I think quite interesting about Motherboard is Monday, you have a lot to, with Monday.com as a big partner, but you actually have kind of expanded that into productivity, which is a wider kind of, is that the strategy a bit? Is like, building it out in increments?
Yeah, we don't believe in standing still. Like I say, much to the chagrin of our employees, because we are failing fast and we're failing forward a lot. And we'll try anything once. And we say to people when they come on board, if you come to us with ideas, the only reason we will say no is if we've tried it before and it hasn't worked. So in terms of scaling the business and that niche, again, if your niche is feeling like you have hit the ceiling, the only way to do that is look at other ways that you can grow your business. Like if there's another niche that you can take, whether it's an addendum to that or if it's a different industry, a different vertical, is there something else? And maybe if your specialism is we'll use traffic control, which Gavin put earlier. You're not going to go and sign up for contracts for the Ministry of Defense. Like that's just ridiculous. But there might be something complementary to that where you say, okay, we can hire a few more people and take on this extra work. A lot of it can be client-led as well. If you're getting questions from people saying, oh, can you do this service? Like take that on board and say, actually, we don't, but we can. And say yes and figure it out as you go, which is a lot of it being a small business. I think, Mark, you alluded to that earlier. Like, yes, we'll do it, and then we hire and run to get it done. So there's a bit of that. But again, if you're moving into a new niche, it is almost like you're starting another business. So you've got hopefully some backing of what you've got at the moment. But yeah.
I mean, I also actually know a company that did something a little bit similar to what you've just described in the starting a new business side, which is that as an engineering firm, they had a good body of clients. They were doing the work. They're seen in a very good regard, and particularly around buildings and structures, they were seen as some really quite remarkable work. From time to time, clients would ask them if they would kind of advise and sort of provide engineering support on kind of the MEP stuff, which is your mechanical, electrical, and plumbing engineering. And they said no, because they don't do that. They're structural engineers. That's fundamentally what they were. And they went out and found a small firm who did MEP as a specialism, a very specialist focus on that. And they merged the two and brought them together. But actually, rather than doing that, and then one of those companies is still there and the other one no longer exists, they kept both brands. The two companies still exist. They're just under common ownership now. And which is a different way to look at how you kind of scale specialism. Because if you're going to scale specialism, that you could have several specialisms, as long as what you're doing is related across those different kind of operations. And as long as you're very dedicated to ensuring that you're not at some point going to ask one person from one team to try to help out on the other team, because then you're getting into, just sort of
murky waters there.
Yeah.
That's very interesting. Yeah, I think that seems to, like, I think that would be a great way to expand that kind of niche and scale special. Yeah.
It's to jump in there again. Sorry, Alison. It can be like in exponential business growth, because if you are running it in Gavin's example, two separate businesses under two separate brands, and they are within the same playing field, you could have, oh, we also have a sister company that does this. Do you need this as well? I can put you in touch, and vice versa, which then means you growing both sides of the business and one hand washes the other, and can help grow that growth. Will rocket that growth exponentially.
Yeah. I like the idea of keeping it clear in the market that you have these two areas that you're specialized, in with the two brands, rather than merging them together and making it kind of unclear to everybody. Especially if you pick a third new name, then nobody knows who any of these people are. Yeah.
And it's something we see the opposite happens with the very large firms and very well-established firms. Is you'll often see them merge, and they're going to keep both brands, they're going to keep their own identities, and then about 6 months to 12 months later, you've got a merged brand, and they are just another big company, whatever the name is that they've adopted. Whereas I guess if you're very focused as a specialist organization, you can maintain your status and your specialism with your brand, whilst perhaps creating or bringing in another specialism as another brand that helps to support both businesses.
Great. I feel like I've got 3 takeaways there. So there's the hiring early career in your team to people in your team to expand your specialists and get them up to speed on your niche as experts in your niche, to scale special, um, expanding niche where it makes sense, you know, in small stages, or listening to customers. I think that's a great point to hear, like what are they looking for, and if it makes sense to bring that in, that's another great way. And then yeah, acquiring a sister brand, let's say, in a different specialism, but that you could use to have under your one business to grow. Yeah, that sounds like great. Is that sum it up?
Yeah, I like it. And I think just back to Richard's original question, are we clinging too tightly to our niche? I'd say absolutely not. I think really sticking to the area of specialization and is key. And I think especially as we talked about earlier, as SMBs become more and more a part of bigger projects and technology is much more available to everybody, having that real area of expertise, I think, is just critical.
Mhm.
Agreed.
Great. I think yeah, people in the audience, let us know if you liked that. You can give us thumbs up or thumbs down. And yeah, if you have any questions, we're about to head into our live Q&A part of the episode. So Mark, has anything come in
I
from the
don't have
audience?
anyone yet, no, that's willing to come off.
We can jump into one we have from before the episode.
Okay.
And if anyone does have one, please do send it in. But this one I wanted to ask as well, because we already talked a little bit about building great culture. But this person wanted to ask about when deadlines hit and clients are demanding. Great culture can sometimes go out the window when the pressure's on. So how do you keep good culture intact when everything's gone a bit stressful in the team?
Yeah, it's a difficult one, and we've experienced it very recently. Capacity and people having to work overtime, working on weekends, and I think a big part of it is having them understand that it is only temporary. It's not sustainable. You can't work your people like slaves. It's going to end badly for everyone involved. So having a plan to remove it and obviously letting them know and just being very appreciative as well of the hard work. People feel seen and they know that they're putting in that effort goes a long way, and just open and honest communication throughout the process. It happens at times and it's unfortunately not going to go away overnight. But if they know that there's a plan and they can see it's coming to fruition, like recruiting more headcounts and doing what we can to reduce workload for them, and then just shouting them out, giving them kudos and communicating with them goes a long way.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'd agree with everything Rob said. I think I would just add that I think culture, people watch what leadership does, and I think they watch what leadership does when it's inconvenient the most, right? So in these challenging moments, they look to see, like, did all the things you said earlier just get tossed out the window? Or are you, at least, are you transparent? Are you clear? Are you recognizing them and telling them what's going to happen? And hopefully part of the culture is people know that there will come moments where we do have to work extra because it's just part of the consulting cycle at times. But yeah, I think that is your culture. Like, doesn't matter what you wrote on the wall. I think it's what you do and what you do in a hard moment.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. Yeah.
And I mean, I'll say, obviously, as someone who's been a journalist for the best part of 20 years, deadlines are often fraught.
Mhm.
There are times when more of them are underway than you would like. But I think as long as as the guys have just said, if everyone's honest about it, everyone understands that that's part of the role that they're in. As long as, I mean, going back to what I said earlier, if when you're hiring people, you're not sort of misselling yourself as an organization, and everyone understands there will be those points where things get tense, where there is pressure. Pressure is a natural part of any workplace, and especially a part of any client relationship when there is kind of stuff to be delivered. But that's okay. That can be in your culture. It doesn't have to be separate to your culture. You can't really set your culture as the ideal state where there are no deadlines.
Yeah, love the insight into the journalism industry there, journalist industry. Great. I will add in another one that came through, but there's a small, this came from a small transport consultancy who is said that the admin side of running the business is killing him. It's a huge time sink, especially when they're short on people. So how do others usually deal with this in practice, I guess?
Yeah, I mean,
Anyone fancy jumping in on that one?
I'll jump in.
Yeah.
All eyes on me. Yeah, I mean that's kind of what we do as a business is helping people automating a lot of admin. And I think we are at a very interesting time in history with the advent of artificial intelligence and where that's going and the automation that it can unlock and the productivity that it can help drive. Um, there's undoubtedly a solution. What we find with a lot of clients in that situation is I don't have time to implement something. And I'm like, but by implementing something, you're going to save that time. So it is that catch 22. So it is taking that step back and saying, this is important because although I'm going to slip on some of my work, the long-term benefits of doing something now far outweigh me being a duck on water and just paddling my way through it. So yeah, there's undoubtedly some sort of software solution or AI or something that you can implement that can help with a lot of that admin.
Yeah.
And it's having that consulting with someone to say, what do you do? How do you do it? Run through your process and seeing these are the points where we can take that off your lap. You don't have to be manually inputting data somewhere or whatever the case.
It's always a
is.
chicken and egg situation, I feel.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think for me, what I do is, you know, something, if I have to do it 3 times manually, then it's kind of like, okay, we can't just keep going down this path. Something's gotta give and change. And the earlier you do it, the better. Like it is true, but appreciate that it's not always easy for people to find the time. But I guess that's all we can do is, you know,
but also,
sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
I say, but also, if you go back to the question we just discussed, the workshop we discussed about specialism, it's okay for everyone in any area of business, whatever your company might be that you're set up or that you're trying to grow, to recognize what you're not specialist at. And remember that if you're asking people to trust you as a specialist at the thing that you do, you can trust other people who are specialists. And sometimes just it can be quite simple. I mean, I have a friend who's a lawyer who told a quite funny story. They were working for a trade association, and the trade association had a helpline that you could call for HR and legal advice and so on, because large numbers of their companies were SMEs and startups, and lots of people simply don't know these things. And she got a phone call from one of the members one time, and basically it was the CEO of a small firm. And I said, look, I've got a real problem. I don't know what to do. My secretary's pregnant. And of course, the lawyer tells this story because it's slightly that creates a particular impression of what's happening. But his concern was he had literally no experience, because it was a new firm and it was relatively small, of how does maternity leave work? What are the rules around this? What do I need to put in place? And of course, that's a 10-minute conversation for someone who actually knows. And then it's easy. But I think with all of this kind of thing, reach out to get help from the people who do know how to make these things easier, whether that's software, whether that's personal expertise, and so on.
We say to clients, like your job spec for what you do on the day-to-day does not include Monday.com experts, but it is in ours. That's our expertise. So let us help you with that. And people then are like, okay, makes sense.
Must be quite a relief to people as well, though, when they know they don't have to become an expert overnight or spend hours reading about maternity leave rules and policies. So yeah, I think that is a very good point. Yeah. And I think that's probably going to be our last question as well. I'll hand it over to Mark to wrap things up and sign off.
Thank you. I thought maybe I would just try to sum up kind of my thoughts on the conversation, then I'll ask each of you to do the same. So for me, I really like this question we got about how do you scale special? And I think the concrete thing I would leave people with is figure out how your firm is special, first off. because if you can't answer that question, you have even bigger challenges. But so, and then figure out how you're going to scale it. So it's not just about delivering the service, but it's about building an engine that can bring people on and add them to your team and get bigger and bigger and still be expert and still be special. So figure out how you are going to scale whatever special is special about your firm. So, Gavin, what's you're kind
Yeah.
of like summing things up.
No, I think based on from the conversation we had, I think it's really interesting the sense that, as you say, being special is really important. But I would say trust who you are from that point of view, and whether that means sometimes you might feel like it'll make it a little bit harder to get someone over the line when you're hiring them or anything like that, or whether it just means you're a little bit more open to saying, I'm not a specialist in the things I'm not, so I'll go to sales and I think it already comes down to that. If you've got what it is you're trying to achieve and you can get your head around that for yourselves, then trust it. Have a bit of faith in it. Keep learning as you go and keep learning from mistakes, but have a bit of faith in that.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, I agree. To sum it up, scaling special is, I think, don't let niche hold you back. 100%, it's going to be an absolute asset for a consultancy to find your place in the market, and it's 100% critical. But if you feel like you've now hit that ceiling, there's a lot of creative ways, and we've discussed a number of them that you can implement. And maybe it's just bouncing ideas off someone in your industry or in your life that you can say, I'm thinking about this, and maybe it's a new market. But there's a number of different ways that you can still scale that in ways that you might not see at the moment. So yeah, some creative problem solving, and I'm sure you can come up with something that can help you scale into different products, verticals, etc.
Excellent. Yeah, I like that. All right. Well, I think we've reached the end here. I just want to give a quick update. Our next episode is in 2 weeks on October 21st. I'm going to have Andy Lin, who is CEO of Provoke, join me. And he's done a lot of interesting work with AI and agents who are part of his team and part of his workforce. So we're going to talk about AI proofing your team for 2026. So please join us again, October 21st. And so until then, keep zigging and zagging. Thank you.